Lost in the vast Sahara, Dr. Elena Carter stumbles upon ancient ruins that reveal a forgotten world. Lush, thriving, and inexplicably linked to the stars, battling a brutal sandstorm and the limits of survival, she must decode the past to find her way back. A breathtaking tale of resilience, mystery, and destiny. The sun hung low over the vast expanse of the Tassili plateau, casting a golden glow on the jagged sandstone formations. Dr. Elena Carter adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and wiped the sweat from her brow. It was mid-afternoon, and the dry heat pressed down like a heavy blanket, the kind she'd come to expect in the Algerian Sahara. She glanced at the small, carved figurine she'd just unearthed, her fingers tracing its intricate lines. It was a symbol of life from a time long gone. Proof that this desolate land was once a thriving savanna, teeming with rivers and wildlife. "Elena, you've got to see this," called Dr. Marcus Hale, her senior colleague. He waved her over from a shallow trench, excitement lighting up his dust-covered face. At 52, Marcus was a veteran archaeologist, known for his unshakable focus and encyclopedic knowledge of prehistoric art. Beside him, Claire Yee, a meticulous postgrad student, knelt over a partially exposed stone tablet. Claire's sharp eyes were matched only by her drive to prove herself on her first international dig. Completing the team was Anthony "Tony" Ortega, a logistics specialist and the glue that kept their supplies and equipment in order. Elena crouched beside Claire as Marcus held out a corner of the exposed artifact. The carvings were unmistakable, flowing lines representing rivers, clusters of wildlife, and figures of humans holding spears and tools. This wasn't just another tablet, it was a map, an echo of the Sahara's lush past. "This is incredible," Elena whispered, her heart pounding. "If we can fully excavate this, it could rewrite what we know about early human settlements in North Africa." "We'll need to move quickly," Marcus said, his brow furrowing. "The forecast mentioned windstorms. The last thing we need is to lose this site." They worked in synchronized urgency, carefully clearing away sand to reveal more of the tablet. The wind began to pick up, whistling softly at first, but growing louder by the hour. By the time they had packed up their equipment and secured the dig site for the night, the wind had turned into a low roar, swirling grains of sand around them. "It's coming," Tony said grimly, tying down the last of their tents. "The storm's moving faster than predicted." Elena's stomach tightened. Sandstorms were no joke, especially in this region. They had experienced smaller ones earlier in the week, but this felt different, angrier, more volatile. That night, the wind's howls became deafening. The canvas of Elena's tent flapped violently, and the sand seeped in through every crevice. She could barely sleep, her mind fixated on the tablet and the mystery it held. How had those people lived here? Thrived here? Could the answers lie somewhere beneath these dunes? Suddenly, a deafening crack shattered the night. Elena bolted upright, her heart pounding. The storm was upon them, and it was ferocious. She fumbled for her flashlight and unzipped the tent flap, only to be greeted by a wall of sand and chaos. The sky was pitch black, and visibility was non-existent. "Marcus, Claire, Tony!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the storm. Sand lashed against her exposed skin as she staggered toward what she thought was Marcus's tent. But when she reached the spot, it was gone, flattened, as if it had never been there. The storm roared louder, forcing her to retreat. Disoriented and terrified, she crouched low to the ground, clutching her scarf over her face. Time lost meaning as the storm raged, the wind's fury unrelenting. All she could do was wait and hope. When the storm finally subsided, the world was unrecognizable. The rising sun revealed a barren, wind-swept landscape. Their camp was gone, buried beneath an ocean of sand. Elena stood alone, her body aching and her throat raw. She called out for the others, her voice cracking with desperation. No one answered. She sank to her knees, staring at the endless dunes. The tablet, the team, everything was gone. As the silence of the desert closed in, One thought consumed her. You have to survive. Elena tightened her pack, adjusted her hat, and scanned the horizon. Somewhere out there, she had to find answers. And a way home. The morning sun blazed over the endless dunes, illuminating a world transformed by the storm. Elena squinted against the harsh light, her body aching from the night's ordeal. She surveyed the desolate expanse around her, searching for any sign of her team. There was nothing, only sand, stretching endlessly in every direction. Her throat was parched, her lips cracked. She unscrewed the cap of her canteen and took a small sip, careful to ration the limited water she had left. Stay calm, stay focused, she told herself, though the weight of her isolation pressed heavily on her chest. As she adjusted her pack, she felt something hard beneath the layers of fabric. She reached in and pulled out a small, wrapped bundle. Unfolding it revealed the notes and sketches she'd made about the tablet the day before. The carvings of rivers, animals, and people now felt like a cruel taunt, a reminder of a lost world and perhaps her lost team. Don't think about that now, she thought, folding the bundle and tucking it away. Survival came first. If there was any chance of finding Marcus, Claire, or Tony, she'd need to move. Elena scanned the horizon, her eyes narrowing on a faint ridge in the distance. It was a gamble, but ridges often indicated rock formations, and rock formations meant potential shelter. With a deep breath, she started walking, her boots sinking into the soft sand with every step. The trek was grueling, the sun climbed higher, and the heat became unbearable. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her face, shielding herself from the sun's punishing rays. Hours passed, and the ridge grew no closer. Her canteen grew lighter. Her legs trembled with fatigue. Finally, as the sun began its slow descent, she reached the base of the ridge. The sandstone cliffs loomed above her, their jagged edges carved by centuries of wind. She collapsed into the shade, gasping for breath and shielding her eyes from the glare. As her pulse slowed, she noticed something unusual. Etched into the rock face were faint markings, worn by time but unmistakable. She leaned closer, tracing the grooves with trembling fingers. They resembled the carvings on the tablet, the same flowing rivers and animal figures, though these seemed older, more primitive. Her heart quickened. Could this be a continuation of the story the tablet had started to tell? The realization gave her strength. If these carvings were here, there might be more. And if there were more, there might be answers. About the people who had lived here, and about how she could survive in this barren landscape. Elena searched the ridge, her fingers scraping against the stone, until they found a narrow crevice leading into the rock. It was barely wide enough for her to squeeze through, but it promised refuge from the open desert. She hesitated for a moment before slipping inside, the cool air inside the cave a welcome relief. The passage was dark and cramped, but it opened into a small chamber. Her flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing more carvings. These were even more elaborate, depictions of ceremonies, hunting scenes, and figures gazing skyward as if in worship. But what caught her eye was the center of the chamber. Resting on a stone pedestal was another tablet, smaller than the one at the dig site, but no less intricate. Elena's hands trembled as she lifted it. The carving showed a journey, a group of figures moving through a lush landscape, crossing rivers and forests, until they reached an empty void. The final image depicted a lone figure standing at the edge of the void, holding a staff aloft, as if to signal their defiance. "What does it mean?" she whispered to herself, her voice echoing in the chamber. The void. Was it the transformation of the Sahara? A warning? A prophecy? She didn't know, but the image of the lone figure struck a chord deep within her. She felt an unspoken connection to them, a determination to endure, no matter the odds. As night fell, she stayed in the cave, her fingers tracing the tablet's carvings over and over. Outside, the wind began to rise again, howling through the narrow crevice like a ghostly wail. The storm had taken so much, but this discovery, this glimpse into the past, gave her a flicker of hope. Somewhere in this vast desert, answers awaited, and she would find them. Morning arrived quietly, the sun casting its first light over the endless dunes. Inside the cave, Dr. Elena Carter stirred awake, her body stiff from a night spent on the rocky floor. The faint warmth of sunlight crept through the narrow crevice, a reminder that she had survived another night. But survival wasn't enough, not anymore. Elena held the second tablet in her hands, its surface a mix of smooth precision and weathered decay. The carving still mesmerized her, the figures in motion, the lush rivers, the void. It felt like a message, though its meaning remained elusive. She knew she couldn't linger here. She had to move, to find water, to find her team, or at least to find a way out. As she emerged from the cave, the desert's expanse once again swallowed her. The ridge provided some orientation, and she scanned the horizon. A faint shimmer caught her eye. A mirage? Perhaps. Or maybe the promise of something more. Her instincts told her to follow it. With the tablet secured in her pack, she set off, her legs unsteady but her resolve firm. Hours passed as she trudged through the unforgiving landscape. The heat was merciless, and her canteen was almost empty. The shimmer she had seen earlier remained distant, a cruel trick of the desert. But just as her energy began to wane, she noticed something unexpected. A cluster of stones arranged unnaturally, forming what looked like the remnants of a wall. Elena quickened her pace, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she approached, she realized it was the remains of an ancient structure. The stones were smooth and weathered, etched with faint carvings, similar to those she had seen on the tablet. Her breath caught as she stepped inside the crumbled outline of what might have been a dwelling or a ceremonial space. In the center of the ruins lay a shallow depression filled with sand. Elena knelt beside it, her fingers brushing against something solid beneath the surface. She dug carefully, her hands trembling with fatigue and excitement. Within moments, she uncovered a third artifact, a cylindrical object carved from stone. It bore the same motifs as the tablets, but this time the carvings seemed to depict constellations, their patterns interwoven with the figures of animals and people. This wasn't just a settlement, she murmured. It was an observatory. The realization sent a chill down her spine despite the oppressive heat. Whoever had lived here had looked to the stars, perhaps for guidance or hope, as their world changed around them. Elena sat back, cradling the artifact, and for the first time in days she felt connected, not just to the past, but to her team and the purpose of their expedition. She wasn't alone in this struggle. Others had faced it before her. A low rumble interrupted her thoughts. At first, she thought it was her own pulse, but the ground began to tremble beneath her. Panic set in as she realized what was happening. A distant sandstorm, its wall of dust rising like a tidal wave on the horizon. It was moving fast, and she had little time to act. Gripping the cylindrical artifact tightly, she searched for shelter. The ruins offered no protection, and the cave she had left was too far to reach. Her eyes darted to the ridge beyond, where the terrain seemed to dip into a narrow valley. It was her only chance. Elena sprinted toward the valley, every step a battle against the shifting sand. The wind picked up, carrying the storm's deafening roar. By the time she reached the valley's edge, the storm was upon her. She stumbled into the crevice, pressing herself against the rock wall as the sandstorm engulfed the world outside. Hours passed in darkness as she clung to the rock, the storm's fury unabated. When it finally subsided, she emerged into a transformed landscape. The ruins were gone, buried beneath fresh dunes. Her tracks had vanished, erasing all evidence of her passage. But the artifact remained in her hands, its carvings a testament to the people who had lived and endured here. Elena gazed at the horizon, her determination solidified. She would find her way back, not just to safety, but to ensure that the stories of those who came before her would be told. The desert had tried to swallow her, but she had found her path, and with it a renewed sense of purpose. Dr. Elena Carter stumbled into the encampment at dusk, her silhouette barely distinguishable from the shadows of the dunes. A group of local guides rushed toward her, their faces a mix of disbelief and relief. She had walked for 2 days, sustained only by sheer determination and a handful of water. "We thought you were lost," one of the guides said, his voice trembling. Elena offered a weary smile, too exhausted to respond. Her pack, though tattered and coated in sand, remained secure on her back, its precious contents untouched. After drinking deeply from a proffered canteen, Elena revealed the artifacts she had recovered. The carved tablet, the cylindrical stone, they were more than relics. They were voices from a forgotten time, a bridge to the Sahara's verdant past. Sitting by the campfire that night, Elena shared her story. The storm, the ruins, the carvings, each detail captivated her audience. "They looked to the stars for answers," she said softly, holding the cylindrical artifact. "Even as their world changed, they endured. They adapted, and they left us their story." The group sat in silence, the weight of her words settling over them. Elena gazed at the flames, the image of the lone figure on the tablet etched into her mind. She felt a kinship with that ancient traveler, someone who had faced the unknown with unyielding resolve. The next day, as she prepared to leave the desert behind, Elena placed her hand over her heart and whispered to herself, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." The journey had tested her limits, but she had found not just survival, but purpose. The Sahara's mysteries remained vast, but Elena knew she had uncovered something profound, a connection to the resilience of humanity and the eternal drive to endure, no matter the odds.